welcome once again to North Central Cinema. I'm your host, Joseph W. Smith III. Call me Joe, please. This is Jeremy Stout, who does some of the production work here and also writes reviews at North Central PA. And he and I both loved the new Top Gun film. And so I thought it would be a good idea if we just sat down and talked about it, since the film seems to be having a moment right now.
Yeah.
It's the movie that everyone's talking about. So I know you enjoyed it quite a bit, Jeremy. Tell us, what did they do right, and what did you think was good about it?
What I think works so well about Top Gun Maverick is that instead, in a world where so much cinema is made of fake CG, an overabundance of non-practical effects, this one grounded itself in reality. Most of the planes are real. Tom Cruise is pulling a bunch of G's, and the spirit that Tom Cruise has to put himself in danger for the enjoyment of the audience is what really helped this movie, to me, succeed, where a lot of summer blockbuster content in the year 2022 kind of fails.
So do you think when a filmmaker is using practical effects, which means they're not using any CGI or visual effects, but they're real guys flying real planes with real backgrounds and real jet streams, do you think, what is the effect of that on the audience? The audience, sometimes you can't always tell that there's no pixels back there, or that there are pixels. So what is the effect then of those practical effects on the audience? What does that do for us?
I think it allows the audience to have a more visceral and immersive experience with the film. You get taken in. You are now, instead of being like, I am watching something that is obviously fake, you are able to ground yourself in a reality easier than it is for, say, the standard Marvel fare.
Yeah. And then perhaps we could also say that when that's the case, the action scenes are scarier. They're edgier. There's something about a lot of the Marvel films. I'm not a big Marvel fan. I don't think you are either.
No.
I'm not going to denounce them, but I don't go racing off to the Cineplex for the latest one. But there's something almost cartoonish about some of them, and it does create a distance. Whereas one interesting fact about this film, and you probably know this, and I had read an article suggesting that it was very difficult to cast it because a lot of the actors that they might have signed up for it, big name actors, couldn't handle the G's.
Yeah.
I think they had to do at least 2 G's, which means you feel like you weigh twice as much as you do. And most of the guys are half Tom Cruise's age, and they were washing out. So they really had to, but none of them actually pilot the planes.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this too, because I actually saw it twice. I took a couple of people that hadn't seen the first film, and they liked the second one too, and I think that's pretty cool. Kind of indicates there's not, the nostalgia thing is not the only reason this film is succeeding. You have any idea how did they fly those planes? Because I read that a civilian is not allowed to be in control of anything owned by the U.S. military. So they could put them in the cockpit, but they couldn't be flying the plane. And yet you've got the camera mounted on the right in front of the canopy, shooting right in there. There's Tom Cruise sitting right behind the windshield. And I'm thinking, who's flying the plane? You can't even see anybody else in the plane.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how they filmed those scenes?
I would assume it was Cruise would be in the co-pilot pit, and you would do some cinematic trickery to make it look like he is the actual pilot.
All right. Maybe some visual effects came in there.
Yeah. Also digitally erasing.
Because there's no one visible in it. No one else visible. Yeah. So differences between this and the first film, the first Top Gun. Any thoughts along those lines?
So what I think that really works with this movie is visually it pays a lot of homage to the first one,
yeah, it sure
but
does.
It also technologically, and I'm not a huge digital cinematography fan, but I think it uses digital cinematography and uses the way you can mount cameras, because they have gotten so small, to really push forward the visuals and the excitement and the thrill that you get from watching these fighter pilots turn and burn, as they say.
I didn't think about that, back in the golden age, cameras were larger than a human being.
Yeah.
Now they've gotten so small that you actually could put 5 or 6 cameras
I believe
in and around one plane.
I believe I read they put about 15.
Okay.
Joseph Kosinski, the director, worked with the Air Force for, I think, a whole year prior to the start of filming to figure out how to mount 15 separate cameras to an
On
F-18.
one plane.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And you also said, by the way, I really liked your review at North Central.
Thank you.
Yeah, North Central PA. I thought it was very well done.
Ditto to yours.
Thanks. And you opened up by saying that Tom Cruise is like the last real movie star.
Yes.
So talk about him. What is the effect of Cruise on this movie? What did you like about him? What did you think he did right?
There is nobody in cinema currently, certainly in American cinema, that can command a screen quite the way Tom Cruise can.
Yeah.
He can stare down the barrel of the camera and with a small wink of his eye or a smirk convey so much and get you drawn in to watching whatever crazy thing this man is going to do.
Yeah. And I thought it's interesting that you went to the facial expression thing, because a lot of folks are talking about the fact that Cruise, he'll be 60 on July 3rd. And he's got a famous penchant for doing his own stunts, and he does a lot of them in this film.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, anybody who's interested in Cruise, there's a fascinating article at ESPN that's probably 8 or 10 pages long, in which they analyze his running. They talk about these Olympian runners, analyze whether Tom Cruise is really a good runner. But what I thought was really extraordinary here was it's the close-ups. It's the grief. It's the long silent shots of Cruise's face when it fills the screen. It's the time when his eyes get teared up, when he's thinking about regrets from stuff that he did in the past. That really grounds this film. What I said in my review is that it feels like a movie for grown-ups, whereas the other one was kind of like boys playing with toys. It did get grown up in a couple scenes in the 80s, but this one really feels like it's much more emotional. And incidentally, that's how they sold it to Cruise. They Bruckheimer and whoever else met with him said, we're going to have to make this a more emotional and reflective film, and that's why I think that's another reason why I think it works.
Yeah. I think this is an interesting film in Cruise's career because it's also the first film where Cruise seems to be acknowledging that he's aging and not just playing a 35-year-old.
Right.
Like, that it's actually acknowledging that, no, this man is in his 50s.
Yeah.
Like, he has gotten older. This is, like, there is a growth and a loss and a lived-in experience that wasn't there, certainly in the first film.
Yeah, very much so. And they play up on that in the early scenes when he actually gets thrown out of a bar because his credit card's rejected, and all these people keep calling him an old timer and stuff like that. So they're playing up the age thing, and I think takes a bit of humility as an actor. Yeah, I think he really did a good job here. And I was just talking with the other guys on the midday show here at North Central PA, and we were wondering if maybe in the next 5 or 10 years, well, certainly in the next 5 or 10 years, he's probably going to have to make some kind of an adjustment. I mean, he can't go on running 15 miles an hour for the rest of his life. He's going to have to make some kind of an adjustment to the kinds of movies he makes and the kinds of roles he takes. But
maybe it'll just be going backwards again to like a Days of Thunder type thing, just sitting in a car.
That might be it. Yeah. I was thinking too that for me, another big aspect of this film is I think it may be the film that helps resuscitate the theatrical experience, which especially during COVID has really struggled. It was already on the way downhill. I mean, I go to movies all the time, and I can't believe sometimes I'm sitting in there with only 5 or 6 other people, and occasionally I've been the only one in the theater. But I went to the noon show on Friday. It's a weekday. It's the first of about 10 shows that day, and the theater was quite full. It wasn't sold out, but it was quite full, and I was thinking, this is really a game changer. I'm thinking that maybe, and Cruise said, we're not streaming this. If you want to see it, you're going to have to go to the theater. Yeah, any thoughts on that, on the revival of theatrical experience?
I mean, I from the box office receipts that are coming in right now, it's doing quite well.
Yeah.
I hope that continues. I love movie theaters. I hope they persist. I've had a lot of anxiety about
Yeah.
movie theaters past COVID, but
Yeah.
I'm hoping this movie really can push people to go out and watch a movie in a theater like it's supposed to be seen.
Yeah, I think we're at about $152 million on the weekend, and I think that makes it the biggest May opening ever.
I know it's the biggest opening of Cruise's career.
Okay, well, that's pretty significant.
Yeah.
Now, and then in about 10 days from now, we got the new Jurassic Park movie, which I think also is probably going to have a huge nostalgia factor because they brought back Elliot and Dern and Jeff Goldblum as well. Is there anything else coming out this summer that you got your eyes on that you think is going to be a big hit theatrically?
Big hit theatrically. Not that one movie that I have my eyes on, I don't know how big of a hit it is, but I am quite interested in Bullet Train.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Yeah. I don't know how much, but for original IP action films, there's not a lot of them. I'm hoping that one's a success. I really like Brad Pitt. He has a great cast surrounding him in that. Brian Henry Tyree, Aaron Taylor Johnson, a lot of fun people in that. I'm hoping that's fun. I'm hoping that's exciting, and I'm hoping that it does well at the box office.
Yeah, and they ran a preview of that when I saw Maverick, and I thought it looked very, very. I'm a big train fan too, so that kind of did it for me. And of course, I love Brad Pitt. In some ways, he's like the quintessential movie star. He's always at the absolute top of his game. So how about, now we're talking about guys like Pitt and Cruise. Let's talk a little bit about the ladies. We had two notable absences in this film. Meg Ryan was in the first film briefly, and they explained why, plot-wise, they explained why she's not in this one. But then Kelly McGillis was the love interest in the film, who had a sort of rocket-like career. She made 4 or 5 really big movies and then vanished. And apparently they did not approach her or ask her even to do a cameo in this film, but instead they cast Jennifer Connelly as the love interest. Any thoughts on that, Jeremy?
I thought Jennifer Connelly had a rather empty role in this one. I mean,
kind of like window dressing.
Yeah, she's window dressing. I mean, she's obviously fantastic window dressing. If you're gonna have anybody as window dressing, I'd like it to be Jennifer Connelly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wish she had a little bit more. I mean, it's similar to like the first one. The first one didn't really give Kelly McGillis a lot to do.
You're right.
It's more about watching the boys hang out. Playing volleyball, hanging with them boys.
I actually looked up about Kelly McGillis, and she said this. This is a quote. She said, "I'm old and I'm fat, and I do look age appropriate for what my age is, but that is not what that whole scene is about to me. I'd much rather feel absolutely in my skin who I am at my age as opposed to placing a value on all that other stuff." So she says, and she is, by the way, a bit older than Cruise, I believe, and she hasn't aged as well as he has. So I think but I really thought they bent over backwards in this film to give Val Kilmer a role. The man cannot talk, and they had to do a careful AI thing to get him to be able to say a few lines. They could have done a cameo for Kelly McGillis without too much trouble, a couple minutes, not a big deal.
I honestly would have preferred if they brought her back as the love interest. I get that she's not that she has aged, but that's okay.
Yeah,
I think it's acceptable that a woman has aged in 40 years. Like I think we should be allowed to and there would have been a more lived-in feeling to that relationship than just some random lady who Maverick met sometime between the end of the first film and the beginning of this one, and it doesn't really feel like it matters or ever gets going.
Yeah, as you say, fortunately, Connelly is a good enough actress that she kind of pulls it off. She kind of gives the character more weight than it really has in the script, just because she's so good. But I think you and I both wish that they had given her a little bit more to do in this film, maybe even a little bit more backstory on where their relationship had been before. Any of the other co-stars that you thought were notable?
I really liked Glenn Powell in this movie. I thought he did a great take on what Cruise was doing actually in the first film, and the relationship that he has with Miles Teller, who is playing Anthony Edwards' son in this one. really mirrors what Val Kilmer and Cruise did in the first film, and I thought that was really interesting. And I think when Glenn Powell really stands out among the smaller cast.
I was very excited. This is a kind of a rabbit hole, Jeremy, but it is interesting because it's got a local angle. There's a Montoursville writer named Adam Makos, and he's written 4 nonfiction books about World War II. 3 of them have been optioned for the movies. The first one to be out is called Devotion. It's a true story of the first black naval aviator, played by Jonathan Majors, but Glenn Powell has the second male lead in that film. So here's a guy, he's arrived in the world of aviation movies. But that's something to keep an eye out for, because Makos says he's about to move into a whole new realm now as they take his books and make them into movies. So maybe we ought to wrap this up here. Tell me this, do you think that folks who have not seen the first film will enjoy this one as much as everybody else is enjoying it?
Absolutely. I think it's a fun time at the movies. I think it's the most fun time you will have in a multiplex this summer.
Yeah, I think so too. It is a lot of fun. In fact, I went to see it twice. And to answer my own question, I did take a couple of people, my wife and a good friend of mine, who had not seen the first film. And not only did they enjoy it, but I realized I did not have to give them a primer. I did. I said, this is what happens in the first film. I didn't have to do that, because the movie does the work. As I'm sitting there with them thinking, I didn't need to tell them all that stuff. It's all there. If you're just paying attention, you can pick up enough to appreciate this film.
And it drops its exposition very elegantly,
It
which is
does.
very unlike movies today.
Yeah.
But it does that far better than most films.
So you got a script here that's very well done, and that's Chris McQuarrie, who wrote the script for Mission Impossible Fallout, Say No More. That's a pretty good movie. So script is much better in this film.
Yes.
Yeah, the writing is much better. So we're both recommending Top Gun Maverick. I would even go so far as to say you might want to see it twice, because I loved it just as much the second time. And hopefully we'll get back together again and discuss some other movie, or maybe we can even discuss some old movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know you like the older films too.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
So from Jeremy and Joe here at North Central Cinema, join us again in a couple of weeks. If you want to talk about films, write to me at robwhitefan@gmail.com. That's just like it sounds, except it's got 2 B's. Hope to hear from you, and I hope to see you again here soon at North Central Cinema. Thanks for joining us.
At UPMC, we're pioneering new ways to treat cancer, and we're working to prevent it. We're advancing new technology to look more closely at disease and helping you breathe easier. We perform the world's first heart-liver transplant, and we're experts at keeping your heart beating strong. We're a global team of more than 90,000, advancing care everywhere and delivering it closer to you. UPMC, life-changing medicine.